Predator Badlands has been out for a few days now, and I really enjoy this film. I had so much fun with it. It's extremely entertaining, and this movie is directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who previously did Prey back in 2022, which surprised the hell out of me. I thought that movie was extremely fresh, something new to the franchise that we just haven't really seen before. Just an isolated little story that's, a period piece essentially as well. It took place, I believe, in the 1500s, 1600s, a long time ago for sure. And that movie really just brought new energy, new life into this franchise. And I'm was hoping that Badlands was going to do the same. And I think this movie definitely succeeds in its own rights as well. Just having that new, much like Prey did, something fresh in the fact that he is our hero. This Youtja, Dek, is someone you want to root for. And with that, we have Dek, our main character, our main predator, who is, as his father says in the beginning of the film, the runt of the family. He's the weakest of their clan. He hasn't necessarily proven himself to his father or his clan. So he has this task to capture this huge animal species, this big creature monster called a callus from a nearby planet. And if he's able to survive the environment of this planet, if he's able to take down this creature, bring it back with him, prove to his father, show his clan, then he will be accepted and he will have proven that he can be a hunter alongside everybody else. And this movie is really only starring two people, Ellie Fanning and Demetrius Schuster. I cannot pronounce his last name, but they are literally the only two actors in this film. Ellie Fanning plays Weyland-Yutani synthetic. She's a pretty big part of this film. We kind of did to see her towards the end of the first act, but I really enjoyed her actually. She's an android, right? So most of her body is missing for most of the movie. Her legs are just completely gone. And she kind of is also part of that comic relief that we did in this film, along with another character, Bud, who we did introduced about halfway through. But this synthetic's name is Thea, and she is on this planet to also capture the callus, as we figured out a little bit later. But at first, she kind of joins Dek's journey in the fact that she just knows where to find this callus. She's been on the planet for a little while. She is an android synthetic, so she kind of, has any knowledge that you can pretty much access. And much with her legs missing the other half of her, there's also her sister, as she claims, the other half of her who she came to this planet with, that she also wants to find. Just another friend that's also a synthetic. So there's, a lot of things that she kind of wants to go on this journey with alongside Dek. Much of her own, personal motivations. Even though she is an android, she is one of the few androids to be injected with feelings. Now, when Dek first gets to this planet called Jenna, he immediately notices, or we as an audience also see, that this planet is extremely dangerous. The life there, all the creatures, the animals, the species there are pretty insane. The first thing that he encounters is like this tree snake intertwined branch looking thing that's just has all these different arms essentially, and they just wrap around you, and they look pretty dangerous. He has a tough time fighting them. I mean, there's these thorn bushes with spikes on the end that explode and they can paralyze you. So there's just a lot going on there, and that's also why Dek is willing to bring Thea along with him, because she knows so much. He would die without her, really. Anybody would, as she says. Nobody's come to this planet, captured the callus, and survived. So he has to bring her along as a tool, as he says. That's all he sees her as. And when she comes along this journey for him, the first 20 minutes or so, they're going through rivers, through valleys, through the forest, all the different terrain that this planet has to offer. And it's kind of, like I said, she's the comic relief, but it's also, this movie is action, adventure, and comedy. Not just because of her or Bud, the little alien monkey that we meet later. The relationship that they kind of form with each other, on this journey, she's just blabbering her mouth, asking them all these questions, but in a very funny, annoying way. It's like almost like your little annoying brother would ask, or, someone younger than you, just so curious about all these different things. And it's pretty funny. I thought it kind of worked. With the Predator movie, you would think that it kind of wouldn't, but I think with Ellie Fanning as Thea, as this synthetic, I think that works, and Dek is also very likable. His father fucks him over at the beginning of the movie. His brother has to protect him, and his brother is the one who actually saves him, sends him to this planet. So immediately you just feel for Dek. You feel for this Youtja who is cast off, who's kind of not really perceived how he should be or respected how you think he should. And even though he doesn't speak English, he's speaking his language. You definitely, you're reading subtitles, but there's a lot of that emotion that's still there that you just completely understand and get. And they did do a cool thing when he first meets Thea. She notices, the language that he speaks, that he's a Youtja, and they do a cool explanation to where she starts speaking English, but they say that this is the neutral language. So whatever language you speak, you will hear. And I just thought that was a pretty cool way of explaining and having it make sense of why she's speaking English and he can answer, and also the fact that this is an American movie and I don't necessarily want to read subtitles the whole time. And with the action adventure part of this film, you get a lot of it. You get a lot of action, a lot of super awesome sequences. A lot of the shit goes pretty hard. The beginning, the middle, when he's fighting all these other creatures on this planet. I mean, he does some pretty cool things with all the weapons that he has, the sword. And you can tell also throughout the film that Det is starting to get better, more skillful, really proving to us, the audience, that he is a hunter and that he is capable. He does get some help though from Thea. She's along there with the ride for him, helping him out. And we also get introduced to Bud, this alien monkey that I was talking about earlier. He was awesome. He kind of saves him in like this first confrontation, this first conflict with this huge monster. And Bud ends up having a pretty pivotal role towards the third act of this film when you learn actually like who he is. But at first he's kind of just along there for the ride, just this cute little guy, Bud Eyes. He doesn't speak the language either, but he is the other part of the comic relief for this film, and I absolutely loved him. I thought it worked so well. They do kind of just do that Star Wars, Marvel, Disney thing to where any adventure action movie like this, there's always going to be that sidekick, right? That cute little guy who's just there doing funny, cute things. And that's exactly what Bud is. But I think it really works in this film. I think the three of them kind of working together, it really works, and it really pays off in the end as well. But back to the action, when we all did hear that this was going to be a PG-13 movie, that always raises some concerns, some questions. But then, I read that that's only because there's no humans in this movie. There are literally only the Youtja, synthetics, and whatever alien creatures are on this planet. So all the action sequences, like I said, there are plenty of them. They are gory. There's a lot of limbs being ripped off, a lot of heads, bellies being ripped open. But it's not blood. It's not red human blood. It's whatever blood that this creature has. The Youtja is neon, kind of turquoise green sort of color. All the other animals on the planet have a different color blood. So that's literally the only thing distinguishing between an R rating and a PG-13 rating. So once I read that, and after seeing the movie, there is no worries with that whatsoever. This movie's action is absolutely crazy. There's enough of it. There's a lot to, like. And it's really just some good old-fashioned fun. Lots of action, likable characters. For the first time ever, you're rooting for the Youtja. And it is just a really cool journey that we go on. And you enjoy it. You experience it. Even just the cinematography, the way this planet Jenna looks. It all feels so real and alive. And there's not a lot, there is a lot of CGI, obviously. But it does all look very good. I think there's only a few scenes where it's like clearly CGI that you can point it out, but I think the whole look of this planet, what they were able to accomplish with just making it feel so alive and lived in, I thought it was really well done. And as we learn a little bit more about Thea and her whole character and, the sister that I was talking about that she's also trying to find, she also kind of comes to her own. She also kind of has her own little arc. There's a certain point to where she does have to make a certain decision, and the one that she makes, you're glad that she makes it. You want her to continue to be along for this ride, alongside Det, alongside Bud, and you're happy that she didn't make the other one. And Ellie Fanning really does do a great job as this character. Now back to Det and how he is the hero of this film, essentially. For the first time, we're rooting for this Youtja. It really does a good job from beginning to end in the fact that he has to prove himself to the clan, right? So he wants to prove himself as a hunter. He wants to capture this callus, bring it back. And the one thing that Youtjas are known for is working alone. They work alone, they die alone. They kind of do everything independently because that's the pride that they take to themselves, right? That's how they have always kind of worked. And even when he first gets to the planet, he's still very adamant of wanting to work alone. He will only call Thea or refer to her as a tool that he needs to guide her through this planet. Even when Bud comes along for the ride, he ditches him. He leaves him because he is still wanting to only work alone to kill this Callus. He starts fighting the Callus, towards the end of the second act. This monster is basically unbeatable. He regenerates no matter how much you fuck him up, no matter how many limbs you rip off. You can chop off his head, he's going to regenerate. And when he does eventually find out what Bud actually is, he comes back into play a little bit later. He kind of changes his whole mind, or his whole mindset changes with that knowledge, and it really just made sense. And that's what makes you root for him so much more, him coming to this realization and not having to work alone. So really just an awesome, enjoyable character all around. Now with the Weyland-Yutani factor in this film, obviously from Alien vs Predator, we know that these two are in the same universe. This movie kind of not only, it doesn't really expand the lore necessarily, it kind of just raises a lot of questions that I think are going to be answered. We're going to get more sequels, especially with the way this movie ends. And this movie has already also made more money in the first weekend than a lot of the previous ones in this franchise have. But when you find out that Weyland-Yutani wants this Callus for himself to study, it raises a little bit of questions, because if you've seen, all the other Alien movies, you know that he wants to study any alien organism that he can for a certain purpose, for money specifically. He wants to create certain things, but you also kind of question why they're there at that time, that specific time that Badlands takes place. So with Weyland being a pretty important character in this movie, I think we're going to get a lot more involvement with him in this franchise, and I really want to see that expand a lot more. I think there is going to be another Alien vs Predator movie eventually. I really like the first one. I'm not gonna lie, I know it has pretty bad reviews, but I enjoyed it. Requiem is obviously terrible. So I can't wait to see whatever this franchise has to do next. If Dan Trachtenberg is going to direct it, I'm going to be all in. I really like what he's done with this franchise. From Prey to this, all being kind of breaths of fresh air. I really, really enjoyed it. So go out and watch this movie. It's only been out for a few days. I think you are going to enjoy it. There's just a lot to like here. The characters, the action. It's all so much fun. And I'm going to give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. But as always, I appreciate you guys for watching. My name is Zach. Like, subscribe, comment. Later.